bunch of questions.
Far away at the man.
Okay, ready?
Go ahead.
So obviously, who makes like the decisions? Do you have to build up the cachet to have any input into like basically the arc of the story of what's going on? Like, at what point do you get to say, I'm not going to do that?
Yeah. So there's been a changeover, right? So Vince is out of the situation now. But yeah, you used to have to earn Vince's trust to be able to either put the kibosh on something like, no, I'm not going to do that. I think, yeah, that's what we need. That's what we're going to do. So you have to earn that
and if
trust.
he said that's what you're going to do,
that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either you do that or you say no, and then whatever the consequences of that is, right? So with Vince, once he trusts you and understands that you understand the vision, then he was much more receptive to your input. I'm not around as much, but from the general consensus that I get from what's going on now, Triple H, Paul, he's more receptive to input from the talent and their perspective on things.
Does that go for as well as like taking a fall in matches or turning over the title or like the way it's going to go?
Yeah. I mean, from that aspect, I think once that decision is made, it takes a pretty big argument because of how they have to book. They have to like they'll book out to like WrestleMania and then they book backwards. So the vision, the overall vision, I mean, obviously the path can take different roads, but when you're talking about titles and things like that, that usually is once that decision is made, it very rarely changes.
But in the gimmick, it's always been a version of the original gimmick that DiBiase, when you first came out, it's always been, I'm talking since the Taker character, but then the American Badass, and then like the way it's coming, did you have input in that?
All that. The whole American Badass thing was mine.
Cool.
And there was two reasons why I did it. One, I was starting to feel a little stale. And two, I was, as great as the gimmick was and the character was, I was confined to what I could do to be true to the character, which was always the most important thing to me, was be true to that character and represent the way people saw it. The Attitude Era comes along, and you have Stone Cold cutting these crazy promos, The Rock cutting everybody's cutting all these cutting edge promos, and it just didn't work. It didn't work for that original Undertaker version. So I needed to shift a little bit. I kept some elements, but then you get a little bit more of Mark Calloway with the American Badass, a hyped up version, because I've always rode bikes and I've always kind of been in that culture. So now I don't have any, I'm free. I can cut the same promos. I can tell Rock that I'm going to, I think one of my favorite ones, I said I was going to stick my boot so far down his throat he'd be able to kick his own ass or something like that. But I couldn't do that as the Undertaker, right?
No.
Only as the American Badass could I say things like that. So it helped me stay. It helped me stay relevant in
and
that
you
era.
Proposed that, and they were cool with it. Creative was cool.
Everybody was cool with it, and I always had the vision that I would go back.
Well, what's funny is I think if that doesn't, from a fan perspective, if the American Badass doesn't exist, we don't get that 2.0 version of the Dead Man. It's kind of like a hybrid. It's a different.
Right.
It's not the original. It's kind of.
Yeah, it is a hybrid. It was a hybrid version. So now, I mean, every iteration that I kind of turned or moved into, I kept elements and brought them along with me, but continued to try and evolve the character. Like, so the Undertaker 2.0, there was, even, I guess it started with American Badass. And that's when I really kind of started incorporating a lot of jiu-jitsu and stuff like that.
Yep.
Just because I'm keeping an eye, because I was always a mixed martial arts fan and a boxing fan. So now I'm watching our product and I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't really work as well as maybe as if, you know, I got somebody and I got an arm bar 'em, or I've got a triangle choke on somebody because UFC was like, they were growing so fast.
And
there
Kurt
were so,
and Shamrock had been in at
absolutely.
the time. Yeah.
Right. So it just made sense. And then now you go back and I've got all the dark, sinister characteristics, but I'm able to incorporate a different kind of style, and it was just able to continue to evolve it, because wrestling fans can get real flavor of the week. I mean,
I know. I was one of them. I could see, once you turn one thing, it becomes like dire for something. You just are like, wait, I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And that's the same with like the last ride, and like there were certain things that started to get, like, you would amplify certain things, like the tombstone was amplified, the walking on the ropes kind of became a thing. You're amplifying. Are you seeing what works or what your body can do, and then getting rid of certain things?
Well, at the end, yeah, it was like, you know, I was piecemealing what I could physically do. Yeah. Like my mind's eye could see, and my heart could see, but my body was just ravaged. There was just like no way that I could, and I was trying to give everything that I had. Yeah. I didn't want to mail anything in, but I had to figure out what I could do and do well. And you're right, like there's just certain things that I had to cut out just because I didn't do it well enough.
It's like young guys who put up these crazy finishers. It's like, are you going to be able to do that finisher in 10 years?
Yeah, no, exactly.
That doesn't look like a 30-year career.
No, I will tell you, like when I was in WCW, Jody Hamilton, he was, you know, he ran what we call the gorilla position right there, right before we go out, and that's back when I would walk down the ropes, I would tightrope, and then I'd jump off. I'd jump off and drop the savage elbow off the rope. And I remember coming back once and already kind of limping. And I'm in my 20s at this point, and I'm limping. And Jody, I never forget coming back through the curtain. He's got his glasses sitting on the tip of his nose, and he says, "That finish is taking years off your career, kid." And I was like, no, sorry, Mr. Hamilton, I'll be able to do this forever. And I walked with a prominent limp by the time I got to in 1990 when I got to WWF. I was already limping because of dropping. I mean, just, you know, it just wasn't the smartest thing to do.
As a kid, I mean, you throw somebody in a torture rack, you realize how hard it is to get someone up who's heavy, right? But you can put someone in a figure four all day. So it's like you got to start to think about
that sharpshooter looked like a pretty good finisher.
Like a great idea. Even the stunner, I guess you're hitting on the backbone. But it's like you start to, I would imagine, when you're filled with piss and vinegar, you're not thinking any of that.
No, you don't think down the road.
No.
You live in the moment, right?
Just even your tombstone. I mean, do you feel like you'd have two new knees if that was not your
Probably
finisher?
not. I'd probably still have my original knees.
Yeah.
Just from dropping all that weight.
Yeah. I mean,
Mark Henry
was, he was a load, man.
He's a big, that's all muscle. That's a big dude.
He was 400 pounds when I tombstoned him. And that was,
I mean, the torque, the whole thing, just night after night, right? Because, and that's his last question on that. So you're also at house shows and stuff like that. As you get down the road, you're not doing as many of those. You're really just doing pay-per-views.
I had about an 8-year stretch where I averaged 200 dates a year.
Wow.
On the road, over 200 dates. So when I finally had that sweat and blood equity built up, I was like, you're going to have to ease up on my schedule. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to. It was just physically, I knew, like, I wanted to last a little longer, and I was just so beat up. And I wasn't doing myself any favors too, because I burnt the midnight oil too. So I wasn't doing the things. I mean, I take much better care of myself now than I did then. Because again, like I had an S on my chest. There was nothing that could hurt me. But finally, I'd built up enough sweat and blood equity that he's like, "Yeah, I'd like for you to stay around for a while." So.
And then that means it's TV and pay-per-views.
TVs and pay-per-views I did that for a short period of time, but even Vince came to me and it was like, man, I need you on some of these house shows. And I was like, yeah, I have not, you know what?
And then once it went international, that's also a major toll.
Yeah.
The international tours were,
because that goes a whole nother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go 17 days. We go 17 days in a row, different city, different country every day. It was crazy, the workload there. And
because even UFC, like if they're booking in certain territories, it's usually all the fighters in that area. They'll do. It's very rare that a person will fly over. Some do, but it's rare.
I mean, you think about going and Saudi Arabia's a whole nother beast now because of the time that you guys are actually wrestling, and there's the heat and it's outside and everything
the travel
else.
And all that.
Yeah, and I mean the time zones, just everything's so much different. And I just feel like Saudi especially is.
The schedules now are so much better, which I'm glad, because it's going to keep the athletes, it's going to keep them healthier and more motivated and more, because it isn't that kind of workload. I'm sure they feel like, they're pretty slammed, but it's not anything compared to what it used to be. And the way we did it, I mean, it wasn't smart the way they booked us. It was just a cattle drive, and we had so many injuries, and and then too, we didn't have the medical staff and all of that either. I mean, everything has evolved to where it is now for a reason.
That's why I go back to like that Butcher stuff and like Superstar Billy Graham and like what those guys were doing, and Dusty, and like back then you're talking about hanging on by life and limb at that point with the way they're doing. It's all just a wing and a prayer at all times.
You talk about the trainer was just the dude that had a roll of tape in his bag.
Yeah, somebody had a roll of tape. Hey, dude, can I borrow that? My finger is broken. Can I wrap my finger up? Yeah, man, don't use too much. All right, it's the only roll I got.
Fascinating, and yet we look back on that as there's always the beginnings, right, of the circus, and in acting and in wrestling, it's the beginnings of it, and there's elements of it that you kind of love, and then you also just kind of take that 10,000-foot view and go, thank God it's not like that anymore. That's
absolutely.
But it creates legends.
It does, and initially, like, I'm always like, oh man, and I've said it, and I've gotten in trouble for it, but I was like, oh man, these guys are soft today, and they don't know what it's like to work, and like, you know what? It's good.
It's good.
It is good, because it's better. They're smarter. They take better care of themselves. They're treated better.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was in that era that kind of laid the groundwork for where they're at now it's another rewarding aspect of my career, because these guys are treated really well now, and they're treated just like NFL players and Major League Baseball and NBA.
Yeah.
It's not the sideshow circus that it used to be. It's a.
Well, you're one of the only connectors. It's like a connector to that old, like that style, the old world style of the territory days, and like the way it was run, and the certain competition, the way the wrestling business was kind of how it became to what it is now. There's very few that have seen both, if any,
and been really part of,
and be at the top of the game the entire time.
Yeah. All the way across the board.
That's the big difference. I mean, this is just, me telling you, which is so crazy. I can't think of anyone, and I don't think there is anyone that's been at the absolute top the whole time. From once that character came, it was from then on in. And that's such a rarity to do that in anything, because what I preach to every young actor that I try to mentor and help is like stamina, not just in your life, but stamina in your career. You have to be ready to go. This is a long game.
Yeah.
This is why you can never get too high and never get too low, because it's a long game.
Yeah.
And I think that very few have done that in the business, where they just last at the top for so long, and that's major accomplishment. Major.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I consider myself very blessed, and I can only imagine if I'd have taken care of myself. I still may be working. I don't know. I'd have done. A little less partying and a few less tombstones. I still might be going.
No, but then it wouldn't be what it was. Then it wouldn't be what
the stories wouldn't be as fun.
No, the story. Right. Well, yeah, I didn't. No, I wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Godfather probably wouldn't be your best friend.
No.
So good.
I talk so little about the actual wrestling.
Yeah.
It's stories that are.
People can go back and watch the wrestling.
They can watch
They
that.
can always watch
They
that.
can watch that.
The moves.
It's the
They're
stuff.
here for the other stuff.
Yeah, they're here for the good
other
stuff.